Noir Plasma Chrome Bleed. Unlocking knowledge, inspiring innovation, empowering curious minds.
This website makes learning so easy. I found all my resources here.
Like what you share.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving headfirst into the 19th century today, and let me tell you, it is a time of just immense contradictions and truly fascinating transformations. We're going to explore this wild evolution from Queen Victoria's incredibly strict top-down moral rule all the way to the lush, scandalous artistic rebellion that eventually closed out the era. It's a story of isolation, massive cultural shifts, and brilliant minds breaking entirely out of the boxes society built for them. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Queen Victoria's reign. 2. The Widow of Windsor. 3. Century Daughters of Genius. 4. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And 5. Picture of Dorian Gray. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Queen Victoria's reign, the monarchy's evolution. They have to start with the namesake of the era herself, Queen Victoria. She didn't just rule during a century, she completely defined it, overseeing this period of unprecedented industrial, political, and military expansion for the British Empire. But to really understand the monarch, we have to look at the girl. Born in 1819, her early life was absolutely not a fairy tale. She was strictly controlled by something called the Kensington system. It was this elaborate, frankly suffocating set of rules devised by her mother and a domineering controller named Sir John Conroy. It was designed to keep her weak, isolated, and entirely dependent. She literally had to share a bedroom with her mother every single night. But then, in 1837, her uncle King William IV dies. Suddenly, at just 18 years old, she inherits the throne and finally grasps her independence. And the contrast is just wild. Imagine going from a melancholy, heavily guarded kid, bundled up and kept entirely away from the world under that oppressive Kensington system, to suddenly you're a young, independent queen. You've got your beloved spaniel Dash by your side, and you are totally coming into your own. The absolute second she became queen, she famously banished Conroy from her presence and just took control of her own life.
Now, when you hear Victorian era, you probably think of extreme prudishness, right? Well, actually, just listen to the sheer ecstatic passion in her personal diary entries. Following her marriage to her cousin, Prince Albert, in 1840, Victoria was head over heels, completely love-struck. She wrote that his sweetness and gentleness gave her feelings of heavenly love she never could have hoped to feel before. Albert wasn't just a husband, he became her most trusted political advisor and really the absolute center of her entire world.
But what truly cemented her massive legacy was the incredible length and the political breadth of her reign. We're talking over 63 years. During that time, she impartially managed a revolving door of super powerful prime ministers from entirely different political parties. From her early father figure, Lord Melbourne, a Whig, all the way to the conservative Benjamin Disraeli, who famously charmed her, and William Gladstone, the liberal, who she actually openly found exhausting. She navigated massive political shifts, famine, and foreign wars, becoming this formidable, untouchable national icon.
Section 2. The Widow of Windsor, a monarchy in mourning.
So that passionate young queen we just talked about, she was about to practically vanish from the public eye. In December 1861, Prince Albert died of typhoid fever. Victoria was completely devastated. She blamed his death on the stress of their son's misbehavior and entered this state of intense, prolonged mourning. She wore black for the remainder of her life. She largely refused to make public appearances in London, retreating to her castles instead. This heavy, self-imposed isolation earned her the nickname Widow of Windsor. And it was this strict, somber public persona during those decades that heavily influenced the rigid moral standards we now naturally associate with the Victorian era.
Section 3. Century Daughters of Genius, 19th Century Women.
Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, a massive cultural shift was exploding. While the Queen was locked away in seclusion, other women across the world were stepping right into the light and wielding massive literary, scientific, and social influence. James Parton's historical anthology, Daughters of Genius, highlights the incredible scale of this. We aren't just talking about authors here. We've got Angelica Kauffman, an artistic prodigy, Maria Mitchell, a pioneering astronomer who quite literally discovered a comet, and Charlotte Cushman, a dazzling actress. These women were shattering boundaries and proving that female genius absolutely could not be contained by traditional Victorian domestic roles.
Let's zoom in on one specific pioneer from this anthology who had an undeniable, real-world geopolitical impact: Harriet Beecher Stowe. She completely unexpectedly changed the world by writing a book that struck at the very heart of the institution of slavery in America.
And get this, her monumental work, Uncle Tom's Cabin, began with just a simple $100 check and incredibly modest expectations. The sources note she received this check from an editor to write a short serial story. She genuinely thought it would be wrapped up in 3 or 4 installments, but the subject totally fascinated and overpowered her. It grew into a cultural juggernaut that forced readers to confront the brutal realities of slavery, proving how a single voice could spark massive social upheaval.
Section 4. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Escape to Freedom.
Building on this incredible literary boom, we have to turn to one of the most prominent female poets of the era. You can practically hear her distinct, powerful voice in these lines from Casa Guidi Windows. Here, Elizabeth Barrett Browning captures her passionate observations of the Italian struggle for freedom right outside her window in Florence. Notice that phrase, "O bella libertà," beautiful freedom. She isn't just writing quaint, polite parlor poetry, she is engaging directly with political revolution and the deep human desire for liberty. And what's fascinating is that her own life perfectly mirrored the era's overarching transition. In England, she lived a life of intense strictness and confinement. She had this domineering father who flat out refused to let his children marry, and she suffered from chronic illness, basically locked in her room. But then, she secretly marries fellow poet Robert Browning and flees to Italy. There, she found incredibly liberating artistic freedom, real domestic happiness, and profound political inspiration. She quite literally escaped the physical and moral confines of strict Victorian England to finally find her voice.
Section 5. Picture of Dorian Gray. Aesthetic Rebellion. Finally, as we reach the end of the century, we see that the strict Victorian morality we've been talking about didn't just quietly fade away, it was actively rebelled against. Literature became the weapon of choice for a new movement called aestheticism, which championed art for art's sake. Just notice Oscar Wilde's lush, almost overwhelming sensory language in the opening lines of the picture of Dorian Gray. Listen to the words, rich odor of roses, heavy scent of the lilac. It is absolutely dripping with indulgence. This is a total, intentional contrast to the era's mandated modesty and the somber black dresses of the Widow of Windsor. Wilde is deliberately inviting the reader into a world of pure aesthetic decadence, where beauty and sensual pleasure are the ultimate goals.
Within the novel itself, Wilde explicitly takes the strict public morality of the era and smashes it up against a hedonistic, highly secret life. And the main catalyst for Dorian Gray's descent into pure indulgence is this mysterious yellow book he's gifted. The source material notes how Dorian reads this fantastic, absorbing chapter about the awful and beautiful forms of those whom vice and blood had made monstrous or mad. It completely reveals the sins of the world in a dumb show. It is Wilde's ultimate biting critique of Victorian hypocrisy, the core idea that underneath the polite, repressed, buttoned-up surface, terrible and beautiful secrets were thriving. So I want to leave you with this final thought today. How in the world did an era defined by a strict, mourning queen ultimately plant the seeds for its own rebellious, decadent undoing? We started with a heavily guarded princess who became a wildly passionate queen who then turned into a mourning recluse, setting these intensely strict moral standards. Yet under that very same umbrella, women found the absolute genius to change the world, and writers found the words to shatter the era's hypocrisy entirely. It's just a remarkable, messy, brilliant tapestry. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the history behind the headlines.
Like what you share.
This website makes learning so easy. I found all my resources here.
Noir Plasma Chrome Bleed. Unlocking knowledge, inspiring innovation, empowering curious minds.